Afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our Career Tip Tuesday session today. My name is Abigail Kinnanen, and I'm one of the career specialists here at the CCPD. Today, we are covering why your cover letter matters more than you think. Bit of a mouthful. This is the perfect session to go to if you're not quite sure what a cover letter is, or you've heard of it before and it's sort of this mysterious thing that's just sort of floating around. We're going to learn all about them today. Specifically, we're going to define what a cover letter is and explain its purpose in the job application process. You'll be able to identify the key differences between a cover letter and a resume. And you'll also be able to describe the main components and best practices for writing an effective cover letter. So, what is a cover letter? A cover letter is a one-page document that is submitted with a resume. So it's not something submitted afterwards, after you get the job. It's not something submitted at any later date. This is something that you will pair with your resume. It introduces you to an employer and gives them some additional context to who you are as a professional, what your background is, and explains why you're a good fit for that specific job. With your resume, you're giving them a history of who you are, and the cover letter can sort of bridge that gap between who you are and the job description. Which jumps into of course, why do cover letters matter? You know, I think a lot of us hear about, you have to submit your resume, you have to submit your resume to get a job, but we don't hear about cover letters so often. I think a lot of people believe that this is an optional thing. In fact, some employers might list it on their listing as resumes required, cover letters optional. So you might think that it's just some extra work to be done. But in fact, a cover letter is important because it personalizes your job application. We're living in a day and age where folks are applying to a lot of jobs at once, and a lot of jobs and employers are receiving a ton of applications for the positions that they have posted. And so personalizing your job application shows them that, hey, I'm taking the time to put in some additional effort here that other folks might not be taking. This matters to me. I genuinely want this job. And so a cover letter can make you stand out. Because, like I said, it's demonstrating some motivation and professionalism. Um, you're required to write a cover letter. We'll talk about in a minute how it's a narrative style. And so that is quite a bit different than writing a cover letter per se, or sorry, writing a resume. It allows for you to highlight your relevant achievements and your skills. If there's something on your resume that you really, really want to stand out to employers, you can focus on it in the cover letter. And it can explain any career transitions or gaps. A lot of folks come to us here at the CCPD and they say, hey, I've been a stay-at-home caretaker for the last 10 years, or I'm doing a major career change after 15 years in this field, or even, I'm just starting out. I don't have any experience in this area. And this is one of the reasons why we recommend a cover letter for folks. It can explain, hey, you'll notice this pretty significant gap in my resume, and here's why. And that way, if you're nervous about talking about it in an interview, or if you're worried that this gap will prevent you from even getting an interview in the first place, the cover letter can go ahead and fill some of that for you. And while employers may list it as optional, many of them still expect it. Because a strong cover letter can help you stand out from applicants and like I mentioned earlier, show that this is something that matters to you. I've already gone ahead and started hinting at the differences between cover letters and resumes, but here is the direct comparison. A cover letter explains why you fit the job, whereas a resume, you're listing your skills, education, and experience. A cover letter is written in paragraphs, whereas a resume, you're typically using objective statements in bullet points. Cover letters are specifically tailored to each job that you apply to. We're going to talk about in a minute, in a cover letter, you are saying, I'm applying to work at XYZ company for this position. Whereas with a resume, for the most part, it can be pretty copy paste. You have your resume. There's not a ton of tailoring that you typically do to a resume, aside from maybe if they're if you're applying to two different positions and you have some experience that you want to emphasize for this position, and then you have some other experience that you want to emphasize for this other one. Pretty much the most customizing you'll do for a resume. And like I mentioned earlier, a cover letter is that personal narrative of, hey, here's where I've been, here's where I'm at now, and here's where I hope to be in the future. Whereas a resume, you're stating those objective facts of what you have done. So you can think resume is what you've done, and a cover letter is why that should matter to the employer, why what you've done is important, and why that will make you a vital asset to their team. So here's the basic structure of a cover letter. If you're not familiar with cover letters, this might look a bit daunting, but I promise it's not super scary. First, you're going to have your header and your contact information. That in this example right here is, Lauren's information, her phone number, her email. She's also included her LinkedIn. This format should match whatever format you've used for your resume. So Lauren has this, blue divider or header right at the top. And so this should be the exact same header for her resume. It makes it really clear to employers that this is a matching set. If they're printing out a ton of documents and they've got to organize things, it makes it super clear from the get-go. We've got, we see Lauren right at the top here. Then you're going to have your greeting included in your greeting. So obviously we have the dear hiring manager, or if you know their name, dear Mr. Smith, things like that. But included in the greeting is the street address, for the company, not your street address, the street address for the company, the hiring manager's name if you know it, the company's phone number, and the company email or the hiring manager's email if you have that information available. And that's because cover letters were at one point sent through the snail mail. And even though we send them electronically now, it's still an industry practice to include all of this information. And we recognize that a lot of companies will hire out their hiring processes, their talent acquisition, they'll use a third party company, or they just don't share the names of their hiring manager to protect the private information of their employees. And so it's totally appropriate to say something like dear hiring manager, or to just say hiring team. After you've included all of this information in the greeting, you're going to move on to the opening paragraph, which is usually just pretty brief. We're going to break all the paragraphs down in a bit, so I'm not going to go into detail here, but the opening paragraph can be a bit brief. And then you'll have the body paragraph or the body paragraphs. I say a maximum of two. Your cover letter, like I mentioned earlier, should just be one page. And a good bit of that page is taken up with all of this, company address, phone number, email, all that information. So it's important that you're being concise and that you're only sharing the most relevant information. So I say a maximum of two paragraphs. And then your closing paragraph, which is pretty brief, followed by your signature. So I keep talking about how we're going to get into these paragraphs. Here we go. The opening paragraph should mention the job title that you are applying to. It should state how and where you found the job listing. So, did you find it on Indeed, LinkedIn? Did you go directly to this company's website? Sometimes that can help give companies some data for, hey, if we're investing in using this recruiting app or this recruiting site, are people finding our positions that way, or are people just going straight to our company website because they want to work for us? Provide them a brief introduction and show some enthusiasm. This can be something as simple as, I'm excited to apply for the marketing position at XYZ company. I found this position listed directly through your website. Your first impression matters, so it's important that you're being clear and direct and not using something like, I'm excited to apply for this position, because this company could potentially be hiring multiple positions at the same time. And you don't want for some glitch to happen and for something to get lost, where you're applying maybe for this instance for this marketing assistant position, but they're also hiring a groundskeeper and you don't want to be a groundskeeper. So it's very clear to say want to be a marketing assistant. The body paragraph. So this is like the meat of your cover letter. This is the most substance that you're going to have. And the goal here is to connect your skills to the job requirements by providing specific examples of things that you have done that can be transferred across your different experiences. And ideally, you're going to focus on your achievements. Ideally, you've had some really positive outcomes in the past that you can brag about. This is where you're going to professionally and respectfully brag because this is where you have to prove why you're going to be valuable to this company. To do this, you can focus on any relevant or recent projects that you've done. If you're a recent student, then it could be, a special project that really stood out to you throughout the semester. Maybe something that solidified, hey, I want to go into this type of work because I had this project and I really enjoyed it. Or it could be an internship or work experience that you've had. Um, and you can focus on, like I mentioned earlier, skills that match the job description. It's really valuable to go in and read that job description. If they're looking for a team player, I recommend picking an example that highlights that you are a team player. This is, like I said, we're showing them that you are the person that they want to hire. So we're going to have to do some tailoring. And then the closing paragraph. Like I mentioned earlier, this is very brief. You're just reaffirming that you're interested in the position. You're thanking the employer for reading this document. You know, for some hiring managers, hiring is not their full-time position. If they are maybe the director of a department or a company, maybe this is an additional thing that's been put on their plate. So we want to thank them for reading the letter. You want to reference any other application materials and invite future contact. Obviously, the goal of this is to get an interview, to snag one of those coveted interviews. And so I recommend, this is just an example line here, but thank you for your time and consideration. I look forward to the opportunity to discuss how my skills can contribute to XYZ's team. It can be pretty simple. So, okay, great. Some general tips for writing a strong cover letter. Like I mentioned earlier, we're tailoring it each letter to each specific job that you're applying to. We're keeping it concise. It shouldn't be more than one page. Just like a resume shouldn't be more than one page, your cover letter shouldn't be either. In fact, it is so assumed that your cover letter will be one page that most employers will stop reading if they notice that it's more than one page. They will either just read that first page or they won't read it at all. So you want to make sure that you're being clear and concise. You're using professional language. Professional language is not something that's overly formal. This is not the time to say that it is an honor to apply for this position. That's a bit overly formal and could rub a particular way. It might not come off as genuine. Professional writing also isn't the same writing as writing a story or a narrative per se. Sometimes catching someone's attention professionally is done differently. It's very clearly saying, I'm excited to apply for this position that I found through this means. You shouldn't have to rely on like an eye-catching statement. I know typically in creative writing they talk about having a hook. Sometimes a hook is not totally appropriate in professional writing, and it can be a bit out of place when you're jumping from a resume to something that feels like a storybook instead. This isn't meant to feel like a storybook. And proofread carefully. When I say proofread, I mean do a few things. One, read it out loud. When we are speaking, we can often tell where something's gone wrong. You can say, "Oh, this just sounds odd to my ears." Sometimes we need to hear it. Or you can say, "Oh, I need to put a comma here because I've taken a breath. We're running quite a bit. Let's take a breath here. Put a comma in there." Use a spell checker, please, because some companies can have spell check automatically, and if an employer opens up your cover letter and sees all these spelling errors, they're not going to read it, especially if it's a job that says we like attention to detail. You've got all of these spelling and grammar errors. It's just not professional. And then get a second pair of eyes on your cover letter as well. It can be so important to get feedback from other people. Of course, the CCPD is here to be that second pair of eyes. But if you want a third or a fourth, an instructor, a friend, someone who you trust to give you advice. Mistakes to avoid. This is not the opportunity to repeat your resume word for word. If employers wanted that, they would have asked for two copies of your resume. You also don't want to waste your time by writing something that isn't applicable or that they're not going to read or that's just repeating yourself. You don't want to have to repeat yourself all the time. A lot of times when we're applying to jobs, we can feel really repetitive when we're thinking of our elevator pitch and we're thinking, all right, here's where I've been, here's where I am, here's where we're going. So don't put yourself in that position. It's also very important to not send the same letter to every employer or to address the wrong employer, if I received a letter addressed to John Smith applying for a different job, then I wouldn't read it. It's not addressed to me. So don't let a silly little mistake like that prevent you from getting a job that you really want and need. Make sure that you're doing that proofreading, that you are double checking that if you're applying to multiple positions at the same time, it's very clear that you label your resume and your cover letter if you've customized them for each position to say, John Smith, marketing assistant cover letter, John Smith, marketing intern, or the company name, some way to differentiate all of these files so you're not accidentally attaching the wrong thing and sending it, which is also just a bit embarrassing. And then you want to avoid just sharing your skills and achievements and not showing them. Now, you might be saying, Abigail, you've been telling us to talk about our skills and achievement. What do you mean, don't tell? I mean specifically show, don't tell. And I've got some examples that I hope are helpful. Telling and not showing your skills, your experiences, risks relying on employers to trust your word despite not knowing you. All right. So in this first example here, this person's written, I have a strong work ethic. Okay, that's wonderful. That's great. That's good. We want people with strong work ethics to work at our company, but you haven't given me anything to believe you. It's not that they don't want to believe you or that they don't trust you, but actions speak louder than words. They do in real life and they do in the job application process as well. So showing it instead of telling it would say, I noticed XYZ problem at my old job, and I implemented ABC to solve the issue. If you want to convey a specific skill that you have, ideally, like I mentioned earlier, one that's listed in the job description, you want to tell the reader what you did to show that skill. Our second example, it looks like the applicant says, I'm a great team player. So they want to convey that they are a great team player. Well, an example of a time that they were a team player could be when our team was understaffed, I stepped up by doing XYZ, by taking additional shifts, by working overtime, by delegating this work. It'd be really valuable. And it's already giving the employer something that says, hey, this person has done this in the past. We are creatures of habit. They're likely to do it again. So it's really powerful and a concise and clear way to convince employers that you're the person for the job. So I love a good summary, a good takeaway slide. So at the end of the day, you can remember that a cover letter introduces you and explains your fit for the position. It complements your resume so they go together. It should be tailored for each job, and clear, concise, professional writing is essential. So now what? Abigail, you have been telling us about cover letters for the last 20 minutes. Now what? Write and submit your own. You can use Skills First. You can find that by going to our website. It's a part of the resources for current students. And you can write and submit your own cover letter for feedback from a career specialist at the CCPD. All Greenville Technical College students can create a free account on Skills First with their GTC email address. If you have any problems or have any issues creating an account, please give our office a call or an email and we can help you through that process. I'll have our contact information on the last slide. But even if you're not applying for a real job, it's great practice to go into LinkedIn or Indeed and find something in your field that's currently being offered. Get the practice of reading through the job description and going ahead and writing a cover letter. Or you could just insert some placeholders. I have students all the time who just want the extra practice of writing a cover letter. And so they'll insert the I am applying for position name at company name. It's okay to have those placeholders until you're actually applying for the real job. All right. I know I've done a lot of talking this afternoon. So if you have any questions, please feel free to send them in the chat. I'll happily answer any that we get. Give it a minute in case you're typing. Oh, thank you, Kaylin. All right. Not seeing anything right now. Um, Debbie did just send a link to a short survey. If you all would fill that out, that helps our office know what you liked about this, what you wish was also included, or if there are any topics that you would love for us to cover in one of these Career Tip Tuesdays in the future. We take all of that feedback. So feel free to fill out that survey. Our next Career Tip Tuesday is very exciting. It is March 24th. It's the Hiring Secrets Employers Wish You Knew. And this is part one of a part two series. So my colleague Verlinda Moore will actually be on with several employers and asking them questions that typically students ask or people ask in the job application process. So look forward to that. It is at 12:30 to 1. I'll also say if you want to go back and watch this Career Tip Tuesday again, we have a YouTube page. I think it's just Center for Career and Professional Development. Um, you can see Debbie sent the link in the chat at the beginning, towards the beginning of the Career Tip Tuesday session. So if you're interested in seeing previous sessions that we've done, you can find it on YouTube as well. And as I promised, our contact information is right here. We're on the Barton campus, located in the Stat Center or Building 122. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a call or email us. But that is all that we have planned for today. So thank you so much for coming to this Career Tip Tuesday session. And I hope that you all have a great rest of your day and a happy spring break next week.